Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Learning and Work Institute's English, Maths and ESOL Conference. It's great to have more than 300 people signed up today. So welcome to you all. The good news about it being online is that you haven't had to struggle through the snow and ice if you've had snow and ice wherever you are. My name's Stephen Evans. I'm the Chief Executive of the Learning and Work Institute. Little reminder, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but English, Maths and ESOL and other core capabilities for life are just absolutely critical for life and for work and for communities. And yet we know that the investment has gone down over the last 10 years or so. And so the number of adults taking part in learning has gone down as well. And if we want to change where we are in terms of the growth of our economy, change where we are in terms of social inclusion and opportunity, we need to change that. They are the fundamental building blocks. Now, we've got some new data coming out from the OECD in the middle of December. So an early Christmas present for any data geeks like me. It's very exciting. But spoiler alert, I'd be amazed if it shows a very different picture from the last set of data about 10 years ago, where about 9 million people across the country, across England, this is England data, have low literacy or numeracy skills and capabilities. So the scale of the challenge is large. There have been some positive steps over the last decade or so. And particularly, some of you will be aware of the government's Multiply programme, which is specific support for adults numeracy. That's really helped local authorities and others and community providers to test out different ways to get adults into numeracy learning. And lots of people have taken those first steps as a result. Of course, we also need the same sort of focus on English and ESOL as well, and we need to join all these things up. So there's much more to do. I think there's some really interesting times ahead. We're going to have the government reforming the apprenticeship levy, turning it into a growth and skills levy. So can we make sure that English, Maths, ESOL and digital are a core part of that new system? And we also have a review of the curriculum going on, which is mostly focused on young people, but will have implications for adults as well. And again, can we make sure that that the provision that we've got, that the government and others will fund, is really focused on what people need. Also, I've talked about the government a couple of times, and the UK government has an important role in this. But actually, increasingly, lots of provision and lots of funding is devolved to areas across England, and of course, the Scottish and Welsh governments have had learning and skills policy devolved for some time as well. So actually, there's lots of local players in this as well, and of course, also lots of people who might benefit from some help with their learning are in work. So there's a real responsibility for employers to support their workers, which will help them as businesses, but also help their workers too. So there's a lot of people who've got a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of brilliant stuff going on up and down the country, and we're going to hear about some of that during the course of this morning. But also we're going to talk about what more do we need to do to make things better, to improve things. Now, if you are on social media, Blue Sky's the one we're sort of pivoting towards, but you might still be on Twitter or something as well. Please do sort of, I think even on Blue Sky, it's still tweet. So please tweet away or post about the conference during the course of this morning. We'd like to get lots of traffic going on through all of that. I'm very grateful to be doing this conference in partnership, as we have been for all the time I've been here, actually, and probably before as well, in partnership with the UCL Institute of Education, with Rapal, with Natekla, with UCU, and also this year's sponsors, ETF. So we're very grateful to work with all of those partners to make today happen. and there'll be lots to follow up with hereafter as well. So, focus of today, hopefully you've all had a copy and had a chance to have a look at the agenda. What we really want to look at is what are the needs here and what are the benefits? Um, how do we how do we get employers and governments, local and national, to do more on this topic? And what do we know about what works? And what don't we know? What do we need to learn a little bit more about? The first session, which I'm going to come on to in a second, we always try and start the conference with hearing from some learners who have gone through the sort of provision that we're talking about, who've benefited from it, and hear about their experiences and their voices. So we're going to hear from some Festival of Learning award winners shortly. Then we've got an expert panel who are going to talk about some of those new government initiatives that I was referring to there. What might they mean? How do we influence them to make sure that English, maths, and ESOL get the priority that they deserve? And where more do we need to push? We've then got a short break at 11:30 before you'll be moving on to breakout sessions. So hopefully you know about those, and the links are for joining them are in the program and will later on or shortly herein appear in the chat for you as well. And hopefully those breakouts are covering lots of the topics I've just referred to. So we've got one looking ahead to the new OECD data that I was talking about, the new data on the number of adults across England that what their levels of capability are when it comes to various forms of literacy and numeracy and what that means. Second breakout that's looking about the impact of devolution on ESOL, and as I said, more and more those local mayors across England have a critical role. And then the third breakout is looking at how we support young adults with English and maths. Actually, we've had a real improvement over the last 10 years in the number of young people who are gaining the English and maths they need by age 19 when they didn't have it by age 16. But also we know we can do a lot better, and there's a lack of resources sometimes, and people sometimes end up on a bit of an exam treadmill, and that's no good for anybody. So we'll be hearing about where we are with that, some interesting things going on to improve results for people, and where we might go next. Hopefully see on the screen if my description of the program there was a bit vague and nebulous, or you just want to see the detail of the program anyway, and you haven't got it yet, there's a QR code there to scan away, and it is on our website too. So I think I have completed my preamble. And so what I'm going to do now is move us on to our first session. So as I mentioned, we always try and make sure that we, do you know what? I have forgotten something. I knew there was something. We'll edit, if we're recording this, we'll edit it together later so it looks like I'm vaguely more coherent than this. If you are on social media, whether it's Blue Sky or Twitter or anything else, you can use the hashtag ESOLConf24. So that's a nice snappy one there. But it is, we can maybe pop that in the chat or in the program if it's not already there. But please do sort of tweet or post away and use that hashtag if you can as well. And sorry, Helen, I've completely mucked up your slides there. You had a slide ready for that. There you go. Right, I have actually finished the preamble now, and like Morecambe and Wise, I said all the right things, but not necessarily in the right order. So let us move on. First session, as I mentioned, is to hear from some of those learner voices and some brilliant achievements and experiences, and hear about what worked well and what might have worked even better. So really pleased that we have with us this morning Albana Bisha from Nottingham College, who's been taking part in ESOL. Donna Ridings from the Oldham Lifelong Learning Service, and Zineb Siari from Nottingham College as well. And Zineb, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to all of you for dialing in, but Zineb has kind of stepped into the breach relatively late on. we've all been doing some lifelong learning and adult education this morning about Zoom versus Teams. So thank you to everybody for dialing in and making it along this morning. Um, so maybe Donna, I can spot your cameras on there, Zillam as well. Thank you. Abana, if you want to pop your camera on for us, that would be fabulous, please. And whilst you're doing that, I might just start with Donna, if that's okay. Can you tell
Morning,
us just
Stephen.
brilliant? Can you just tell us a little bit about your experience and sort of what sort of learning you've been doing, how you found that, how you got into it in the first place? Just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I first went into Oldham Lifelong Learning. I was aiming to do just my functional skills, but I was encouraged into doing GCSEs, and I started doing my maths GCSE last year, and I passed it with a level 5, so I was pretty chuffed with that. I came straight out of the exam room and signed up for my English GCSE. So I'm on the way to getting one of them now as well.
Brilliant. Congratulations on your exam results. I'm sure you can't see anybody else here, but if we were in an actual room, there'd be lots of sort of applauding. So you'll have to take some virtual applause
Thank
from
you.
us all, I think. But really well done. I mean, that must have been. Did you find that sort of difficult, sort of going back into a classroom and thinking about, functional skills and GCSEs and things like that? What led you to take that step?
Um, well, years ago, I was bullied. I didn't have any qualifications at all, and I decided now was the time to get them. I think my son spurred me on really because he's taking his exams at the moment. So I thought, well, do you know what? I need to go back and do that now. So I stepped into Oldham Lifelong, and the rest is history, really.
And you've not had a competition with your son about who gets the best results, have you?
We do, yeah. I'm. He's now on his A levels, and basically it's like, well, you haven't got A levels. I said, well, there's nothing stopping me, is there?
So the
So,
race to the top, you'll both be doing masters in 3 years' time or something.
well, yeah, we're both study buddies now, so it's good to have that competition between us as well.
I mean, that's I hear a lot from people who've gone back into learning as adults that actually sometimes it's being able to help children with their homework, and sometimes it's sort of being spurred on to sort of be able to match along. And that was really the trigger for you, is basically he was
Yeah,
doing his GCSEs and you kind of wanted to, or you were kind of spurred along to do that as a result.
yeah, yeah. He stands behind me telling me what I've got wrong.
Well, I'm sure
So,
you can do likewise as well.
well, yeah, soon.
Yes. And just tell us a little bit about so that's what spurred
Where
you
am
to
I?
sort of go back into learning. How was it going back into that classroom for the first time? Because as you say, you hadn't had the world's best experience at school. So was it a little bit daunting, or was everybody really friendly and welcoming? How did it go?
It was daunting at the start, and I actually thought I was going to be one of the oldest learners in the room. I thought I would walk in and there would be a lot of young learners, but they were all quite similar age to me, so it was nice. And within time, we all became friends. And at the end of the courses, it was nice because we weren't just celebrating our exam results, we were celebrating everybody else's. So, yeah, it was a lovely group. Yeah,
So you kind of got that, you were in similar sort of position. I'm sure you're all very different, but you're coming from similar or similar ages and things like that, and you
yeah,
you form that sort of camaraderie through the group.
yeah, we were all encouraging each other. So it was nice. And we exchanged numbers and everything. So, yeah, it was a nice group.
Oh, so you've stayed in touch afterwards as well.
I'm in touch with a few of
Yeah,
them, yeah, and some have gone into the new classes with me. So, yeah, I know a few people now.
fabulous. And just tell us a little bit about the difference that the learning has made to you. What difference has it made to your sort of day-to-day life?
Well, I've gone on to get further. I've like set goals. I've achieved them goals and I've exceeded them goals. I mean, I got the Festival of Learning finalist award, so that was really nice. Um, I'm actually taking another course for supporting learning difficulties, and I step into a classroom as a supporting other learners as well. I do my first one tomorrow. I will be supporting other students in maths, so I'm quite excited about that. Yeah,
Fabulous. So you're kind of so you've got a bit of extra learning to another course to do, and then
yeah.
also helping other, is it adults, adult
It's
learners that you'll be
adult
helping?
learners, yeah.
Yeah,
So they were in the same position. They're in the same position as what I was a few years ago. So yeah, it's going back to help them now.
presumably that's, I don't know if you had anyone um to sort of do the same for you when you started. Presumably kind of seeing people like me doing it helps to kind of see that it's possible.
I saw other people in the classroom supporting other
Yeah,
students. Yeah, so um, I was watching them and I thought I'd like to do that. So I've stepped up to that role now. Um,
brilliant.
yeah,
Well, good, yeah, good luck for tomorrow as well.
thank you.
Look, one last question to you, if I may. Part of today's conference is trying to help or think through what else can we do to help adults who want to get started in learning or get back into learning, and to make sure that learning goes well, and to inspire other adults as well. So what do you think would really make a difference, or is there something that made a difference to you to start with, or is there something you think, oh, if only I'd had that, that would have been really helpful? What would you like people on the call to take away that they could do to better help adults?
I think the thing that stopped me going in earlier was my confidence, really. And I've had people speak to me. I mean, they've seen all the posts that have been on Oldham Lifelong Learning, um, and they've seen like me on the street, and they've said, "I want what you've got." And I've basically said, the only person who's stopping that is yourself. So take that opportunity. Uh,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Well, Don, thank you for sharing your experiences. Congratulations on your exam results. Keep beating your son, and good luck tomorrow with it as well.
Thank you.
It's really grateful for you sharing your story.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Zineb, if I can turn to you, as I say, thank you. I know we've asked you into this relatively late, so thank you so much for spending
You're
the
welcome.
time this morning. Um, Perhaps if I start the same sort of place that I asked Donna, actually, just tell us a little bit about what got you back into learning as an adult in the first place. What inspired you?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we
Yeah,
can.
very good. Okay. My journey was very different. I think we all have different journey here. Um, I was living in France and I moved to the UK and it was a choice. I was lucky enough to move with my French passport. I came with the Eurostar train to live in the UK. My journey wasn't a struggle financially to come here, but it was, I think, the same struggle as the student that I'm helping now regarding to the English. Because when we arrived, we had three children, and I came here with my husband, and we had no English whatsoever. But in France, back in France, I had my education. I went to school, to university. Learning for me wasn't a new process or something I had to start from the beginning. But learning English was definitely something that I was rubbish at English in France. I was really bad at it. And I remember even the teacher saying to me, but you need to have better grade. I said, but I will never use it. What do you want me to do with English? I can't remember. I can remember that really vividly. And when I came here, I had nothing, just thank you and please. That's the feeling you have if you go to Spain and you don't speak Spanish, or if you go to Morocco to go to Marrakesh and you don't speak a word of Arabic. That's how I was here. But it was just, I need to do something. I can't be cut off from society and I can't not understand what is happening around me. And one thing that really triggered everything for me is I dropped my children at school and the teacher came to me and she started talking about my daughter and I didn't understand the word. I said, no, that cannot be. No, I need to understand what is happening with my children. And I think it started there. The thing that, no, I need to understand. And then my learning journey started here in the UK.
So it's a different set of circumstances to Donna, but actually, kind of similarly
Similar.
inspired by your children and wanting to help with their
Yes.
education and understand
Yes.
what was going on.
Yes.
Um, and so that's kind of what motivated you. How did it then feel going into a classroom to learn English? Was it nerve-wracking or were you excited? How are you feeling?
I was very happy because I was listening to BBC News and the radio all the time in English. And BBC News, I was always watching with the subtitle. And what is good with BBC News is they have the same documentary all day long. What you hear it in the morning, you don't understand the word. By the end of the day, oh, maybe they're talking about this. And then you carry on learning and Google Translate. But when I went to the classroom, I was very, very happy because it was a bit of a journey to reach a classroom, an ESOL classroom. It wasn't just, oh, I want to study and then end up in a class. The waiting list is pretty long and you have to go through many things to have your place. But when you have your place and you're enrolled and you sit in that class, you said, that's it. This is the start of my journey to learn this language and to be able to do something with my life in this country because I've chosen to move here and it wasn't to stay from at home. That wasn't an option for me. No, to do something better than that.
That's really interesting because our every year we do a survey to find out how many adults are taking part in learning, how are they doing it, that sort of thing. And we've seen a real change in the last 5 years with people learning through, videos and online and things like that. So it sounds like for you, actually BBC News repeating their segments through the day, and you can kind of
Yes,
pick it up and a bit of
yes,
Google Translate, then
yes,
helped you to arrive at the classroom with some
yes.
confidence and thinking, actually, I know some of this already.
Yes, I know a bit of that. And I started really low, but then the learning was really rapid. I
Mm.
moved class in the middle of the year because I was too high for this one, and then they moved me. It's just because it's not because I'm clever. It's just because I had this drive that said I need to learn English as quickly as possible, and I never stopped. Even coming back home, I was using the tool you're talking about, YouTube videos. It just you want to and your children start to speak a bit of English because they pick up the language pretty quickly. They're very young, and after 6 months, they're just running in English. So what? Stop, stop, just bear with me a second. And you want to keep up because it's how they look at you. Oh, she
Yeah,
doesn't understand. I didn't want that.
fabulous. Well, you've answered this a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the difference that learning has made to you in your life.
Oh God, it's like day and night. When we came here, we arrived with our children and we had a bit of savings, but that's just melted like butter under the sun, like we said in French, and it just disappeared very quickly. And we end up in benefit. My husband was struggling to find work, agency work, 0 hour contract, and for us, learning. He's an engineer. He's a high qualified person back to there, and I did law in France. But law was impossible to use here because the constitution, everything was very, very different. But his skill, he could use them, but he had to learn. But for me, for example, what changed is education first, and then I did an apprenticeship, and then they said to me, oh, you're very good, and they offered me the job, and now I'm working at Nottingham College and I'm helping people who are going through the same journey as me, sometimes with more difficulties because they are asylum seeker, refugees, the background is very difficult. But now for someone who started with benefit, I'm paying taxes, I'm earning pretty well, I'm very happy with what I have. And I would like to go higher, don't get me wrong, but just between where I am today and where I was before is just not even comparable. The change is massive.
Well, congratulations on all of that and all
Thank
of
you.
those achievements. And also, it's great, both you and Donna helping other people going through the same sort
Yes,
of journey as well. So thank you so much for sharing your
you're
story
welcome.
with us this morning. We really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
And last but not least, if I move across to Albana, hopefully you can kind of hear me okay. And if you want to just take yourself off mute if you're able now, please. And just whilst you're doing that,
Can
brilliant,
you
perfect.
hear
We
me?
can hear you brilliantly. Yeah,
Can you
perfect.
see me? Because I
We
can't see myself.
Oh yes, we can see you and we can hear you. It's all perfect.
Okay, thank you. So I
Um,
don't know where to find it myself.
I know. Well, this is lifelong learning for all of us, where the buttons are
Yeah.
always in a different place.
Okay.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the learning you took part in and why you wanted to do that?
To learn I want to learn English because I moved since 10 years, since 2014. So I need to communicate. I need to find it a job or to help my son, my children in homework or to go shopping, to buy online, to get tram, bus, everything for my life. So I wanted to learn. So I have started from pre-entry, and now I am in level 2, and I'm having GCSEs as well. So
Fabulous. And this is at Nottingham College, I think, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah,
How did you find sort of going through the door for the first time? Was it a bit scary, or were you
Oh,
excited? Or
it was scary, it was really stressful, and because I didn't know how's the life going in the UK, and I didn't know shopping, I didn't speak any English, and but after a while, I was really lucky because I've got good neighbors for 10 years. Now we were like a best family, and she helped me a lot. She put a piece of paper like that, if you can see it. She put all the names here, and I put in the kitchen, in the living room, in everywhere, so like a desk, like a computer, like a kettle, fridge, and she knows me. Uh, I am able to catch up the English, and so she helped me a lot. And my daughter suggested and insisted to start college because she was before in same college, and she said, "Mommy, you are better and to start college because I was, like because in my country I was my in my country I was working with children's special needs,
Mm.
and my dream was to be a math teacher." So my daughter said, "It's better if you can start. It doesn't matter how old you are." So I thought, oh no, I'm old now. I can't do it. I can't catch it. The English is really hard. So she helped me a lot. And now I know where to go. I know what to do. I know how to apply. I know how to help my son. And I know everything here now.
Fabulous. And
It takes time. It takes time,
yeah.
but if you are like, what do I say? Like, uh, how do I say? Like, your passion. You want it. You are excited to learn. You want things like you push yourself to do
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. And all three of you actually, interestingly, have been sort of inspired by and to help your children as well. So this is kind of a common theme we've had. Can you just tell us a little bit? So we always want more adults to take part in learning. What would you say to someone who's thinking about going back but is a bit worried about it, doesn't know if it'll help? What would you say to them?
Can you repeat it again, please? Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I spoke a bit fast there. If there were other adults who were thinking about learning English or maths or whatever, but
Mhm.
weren't sure, were a bit worried about it, what would you say to them to encourage them to go back into learning?
Oh yeah, I can show all my experience to them, and then I can recommend it to continue college because it has lots of benefits. Uh, so you can start from beginners, you don't know any English, and you can go till level 2, and after that you can continue GCSEs or functional skills, or you can go at the university as well. So. Uh, and there are lots of courses, professional courses as well, like hairdresser, like chef, like plumbing, scientific, and we have lots of courses here. And even it can help you with student finance. You can give your bus pass as well, and lots of benefits here. So I'm really happy. And I was thinking for like to be math teacher, but I thought in my mind I'm too old. And Alison, who was my math teacher, she motivated me. She said, "You can do it," because she saw me my passion to start working with children or with maths, and so she helped me a lot. And also we have two learning supporter assistant, Nina and Najat, who can help you with homework, can help you to prepare you with exams, and lots of benefits here. So I'm
Fabulous.
happy. So I can't stop learning. I don't want to stop learning.
Well, that's a fabulous note to finish on, I think. And there's the point about opening doors to lots of other opportunities and the support available is,
Yeah.
and it's great. All three of you have been so passionate about the learning you've done and so passionate about supporting other people into learning as well. It's a really inspirational way to start our event this
I
morning.
will tell you and more something more. So now I volunteer in this college, and I'm so happy, and because I've got now experience, and from Link3 recruitment, I find the job working as a teaching assistant in the school with special needs. So I'm really happy. I can find the job easily.
Brilliant.
So communication is very important.
Indeed, yes, and congratulations to you on that job.
Thank
That's
you.
fabulous news, and it's great to hear from all three of you about the difference that learning has made to your lives and your careers as well. Thank you so much for sharing those stories. That's given everyone a really great start to the day. However, my poor chairmanship means that we are now a few minutes behind, but I think we wanted to hear from Zineb and from Donna and from Albana as well. So I think that was well worth spending that little bit of extra time on. So thank you so much. Now, as I said, we're going to move on to a panel conversation next about how we can make sure there's even more amazing learners, such as we've heard from today. So I'm going to chair this one. I'm going to hand over to the Learning and Work Institute's Director of Policy and Research, Naomi Clayton. So Naomi, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, so as Stephen has said, the focus of this panel session will be on the opportunities that come with the new government. So I'm Naomi Clayton, Director of Policy and Research at Learning and Work. And the new government, as Stephen said earlier, has announced a number of initiatives on further education and skills, including establishing Skills England, the qualifications and curriculum review, and commitment to further devolution. And Jackie Smith spoke just recently at the AOC conference and promised to fix the foundations of our system and reverse the declines of the last 14 years. Because as there were positive initiatives like the investment in the Multiply programme, we saw that participation in adult literacy and numeracy courses declined sharply as investment in adult education and skills halved. So I'm joined by a fantastic group of panellists this morning to discuss what the opportunities are with the new government to put adult essential skills high on the agenda and discuss some of the big challenges with regards to essential skills. In a moment, I'll hand over to our panellists, but just to quickly introduce them, I'm joined by Simon Parkinson, who is CEO of the WEA, a leading adult education charity, by Kieran Roche, who is Public Affairs Manager at the Association of Employment and Learning Providers, and by Rhiannon Roberts, who is Policy Officer and FE Prison Education and Adult Education Policy Lead at the University and College Union. So I'm going to invite each of the panelists to give their kind of quick opening statements, and once the panelists have made their initial contributions, we'll welcome questions from the audience. So please, as the panelists are speaking, please do pop any questions that you've got in the Q&A function. So I'm going to hand over now to Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Naomi. Morning, everybody. Wow, following the first speaker, following the learners, that's a tough job. Those stories were really familiar to us at the WEA. That passion, that behaviours and attitudes towards learning are outstanding. That personal development that our learners make is outstanding as well. And you heard that from three learners from different institutions as well. So fantastic to be following that. Here at the WEA, we talk about having 3 strategic pillars. We talk about learning for life, we talk about learning for work, and we talk about learning that builds communities. And I think essential skills rightly cuts across all 3 of those strategic pillars. So if I just give you a sort of brief overview, we've got a brief 5-minute sort of slot here to talk you through where we're coming from on essential skills. If you think about those skills for life, learning for life, and the real fundamentals and foundational skills around maths, around English, ESOL, I would add digital to it as well. Coping with the cost of living crisis, just really understanding your household finances. Without that, foundational level of numeracy, that's really, really tough. Understanding your gas bills. I don't think I understand my gas bill. How do we support people with those real practical learning for life opportunities? And increasingly, and we see this from, as recently as the new 10-year plan for the NHS, a move from analog to digital in that. Again, if you've not got the foundational numeracy and literacy skills, how do you interact with public services going forward, particularly in a remote way and in a digital way? So I think that they're learning for life, skills for life, real big part for essential skills. And then if we look at skills for work, learning for work, actually it's really, I was really pleased that the initial Skills England report did pick up the importance of essential skills. I think it's the good starting point. They've not just jumped to higher level technical qualifications straight away. I think there's a fear that that's the direction of travel, but actually really grounding that first report with essential skills and how important essential skills are, gave me some, hope really. And we know that, to progress in work, to get into the workforce, then, those essential skills, again, literacy and numeracy are fundamental. Again, it'll be interesting to see the new white paper from DWP, getting Britain ready for work, back to work, what will they say around the importance of essential skills like maths and English? So again, you're starting to see, we've talked about NHS, DFE, DWP, you sort of start to see where I'm going with this, and then if we look at learning that builds communities, and you heard that firsthand from our 3 learners earlier, the impact that it has at the school gates for mums and dads to be able to engage with other mums and dads, with the teachers, with that gift of shared language. We think about some of our communities and the troubles they've had over this summer. We've really got to make sure that we give that gift of shared language across these communities. And I would go further and say, regardless of your country of origin and regardless of how long you've been in the country or how you arrived in the country, how do we really, really promote and push the benefit, that ESOL and the gift of English language can give in terms of, uniting and reuniting communities. And, organisations like the English Football League, with EFL in the community, we work quite increasingly with them, and therefore the Department of Culture, Media and Sport have got an interest in this. They're interested in some of that work, and again, so you can see what I'm saying is that as a sector, how do we position essential skills right across all of those government departments? This is not just the DFE conversation, and actually the funding for essential skills isn't just a DFE issue. So that's my challenge to us as a sector. How do we really make it work right across all of the government's missions? And that's probably only three-quarters of the answer, because as Stephen said, through devolution, we've got to convince regional and local policymakers as well about the benefits of essential skills. So that's my pitch for what we do at the WEA. Fantastic to follow those learners, and hopefully some opening remarks around the importance of essential skills and how we position them nationally and regionally.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Kieran, can I come to you next?
Yeah, thank you very much, Naomi, and yeah, thanks for that opening, Simon, as well. That's a sort of very passionate pitch about the importance of essential skills. So yeah, first of all, just want to say thanks for having me on the panel. To set up, I just wanted to sort of echo Simon. I actually agree with obviously quite a lot. That's what Simon said, and define what we think about as essential skills. Basically, we believe, like Simon said, that digital should sit along English and maths to form a sort of golden triangle of subjects that really not only help people get work ready, but get people life ready. Stories of Albana, Zeneb, and Donna really highlighted the power of some of these essential skills. And then Simon went on to highlight how much these skills can boost communities and confidence. So these three, English, maths, and digital, not only are they sort of incredible confidence boosters, but they're also the ultimate transferable skills. You know, these are skills that can and will be used in basically all jobs and in all careers in the 21st century. And you know, as we know that, you know, it's hard to avoid digital now in really any career. So I think that needs to be put alongside the English and maths. We know the scale of the challenge on essential skills is massive, and it really cuts right across the education sector. So over 30% of students leave school without GCSE in English and maths. That number reaches 50% for disadvantaged students. We also know that at least 9 million adults in the UK have low literacy or numeracy skills. And basically this is holding not only people back, but also the economy back as a result. I think there's three main sort of areas that I'd like to talk about today. One is apprenticeships, one is 16 to 19, one is AEB, adult education budget, and I'll just sort of quickly go through them rather than sort of hold people down for too long. AOP, so on apprenticeships, we know that functional skills is an exit requirement in apprenticeships. And AOP, we recently conducted a mini commission. We spoke to 168 of our members. 168 of our members responded to our mini commission on functional skills, just trying to get a sense of what's going on in the ground, how the policy impacts learners, providers, and employers. And what it revealed is quite counterintuitive, and it's that having functional skills as an exit requirement on apprenticeships is actually closing the door to learners without English and maths, meaning fewer learners gaining new English and maths skills. What we found that on a certain date in September, 25th September 24, if people want to check, 76% of all apprenticeship vacancies had a minimum of grade 4 or C and above for English and maths. So essentially shutting the door on people who need English and maths. And the point I'm trying to make is, I think with all the policies around English and maths, we really need to think about what's happening on the floor. You know, are we getting English and maths learning to learners who need English and maths? On 16 to 19, we know there's a sort of bulge of learners incoming, 110,000 new 16 to 17-year-olds in the next 4 years. So obviously challenges there around, you know, how do we reach the most disadvantaged learners and make sure that you know, the funding models can allow for that. And then on A and B, just to finish off, obviously there's a big sort of funding pot for reaching people who need English and maths. And we do know that the funding for adult education has declined quite significantly in the last sort of 15, 20 years. But we also know that there's a big underspend on the adult education budget, £300 million in the last 4 years. And I just wonder whether the conversation needs to be had about how the funding model can better help reach learners and maybe put the learner at the center of the funding rather than the institution. Just some thoughts about sort of the wider policy issues that the new government might want to tackle to try and stimulate learning in English and maths and help communities and people build confidence and hopefully sort of raise the floor of the skills base in this country.
Great. Thank you, Kieran. And Rhiannon.
Thank you. So I was asked to speak about what FE staff need to support students in the classrooms. So, right, I think I can't avoid that F word for funding. Okay, so I'm of the opinion that actually there is a magic bullet for the problems that we're facing in education, and that is funding. I'm not going to elaborate an awful lot about funding. We tend to know that there is about 50% less funding going into adult education today than there was about 10, 15 years ago, and about 25% less funding going into further education today than there was about 10, 15 years ago. That's in real terms. But I thought I would focus on what would we do if we actually got that funding? What would we actually do differently? And I thought I would talk a little bit about my own personal experience and professional experience. So personal experience as a learner myself, as an ESOL learner myself, and also as a teacher, a former teacher of ESOL and in FE. Some of the teachers here will be familiar with Edgar Dale's cone of learning, or the pyramid of learning. And if you're not, just Google Edgar Dale, or if you can't hear or understand how that's enunciated, just key in cone of learning or pyramid of learning. And you'll find, if you're not familiar with it, that it's a triangle. And Edgar Dale found through his research that by talking at people, the way we tend to do in lectures and in classroom, that learners learn the least amount through that method. And the more active the learning is, the more passive the learning is, the less we learn, and the more active it is, the more we learn. So the issue, that's simple, that is not difficult. But what's difficult is getting the resources to invest in that method of learning. We know how to do it, we just are not doing it. It's a policy decision, it's a policy decision in government not to invest in these methods. Different people have got different styles of learning. I will have a different style of learning to my colleagues on the panel and a lot of different people here in the room. So some people will learn better through learning, some people will learn better through reading, and so on. But I want to go on to talk about two experiences. So I wasn't planning on saying this, but having heard from the learners, I just wanted to experience a little bit, share a bit of my experience. So I grew up not speaking English at all. Okay, I had to learn to speak English. Now, growing up in Wales, we were put in a class, maths class, and at the age of 11 in English. There was no way any person who did not speak English was going to pass maths. Okay, so I appreciate how important English is, but I also think it's important to recognise the differences in people. So when I taught at adult education, because I came through that process myself, we had enough money to buy a textbook each for each student in class. In FE, we had FE departments, sixth form departments tended to have £100 per year to spend on books across the board in any 1 year, and it just wasn't enough. But one of the experiments that the Welsh government did was they invested money. They couldn't make colleges and schools and adult education departments teach through the medium of Welsh so that it gave equal access to everybody, but they invested in in English language resources, multimedia resources, books, cards, quizzes, all of these different resources that supported learners to learn. And that was in both English and in Welsh. And at the end of that programme, they offered those resources to the colleges and sixth forms in schools. And what they found was that more people were going on to study A levels and had the option then of going on to higher education if they wanted to. And that was through funding. And that's what we need to see more of in Westminster that we haven't seen.
Great, brilliant. Thank you, Rhiannon. So if I invite Simon and Kieran to turn your cameras back on. And just reminder to the audience, if you've got any questions you'd like to pose to the panelists or any thoughts on what you've heard so far, please do put those thoughts in the Q&A function. I just want to pick up on Simon's point about how we position essential skills right across government and make sure that they're kind of high on the agenda as government is thinking about its kind of key missions. Simon, what do you think the sector needs to do to put essential skills high on the agenda?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Naomi. I think we need to work together first and foremost. I think there are still instances where there's almost competition for learners, and that's nuts. As a sector, we've got to create those pathways, across, a range of providers from, if we're talking, purely about adults, from, our independent training providers, our colleges, our specially designated institutions and charities like the WEA. There is so much demand out there that I think it's on us as a sector to make sure that there are really clear and understandable pathways for learners around essential skills. I think, even given devolution, I think we have got to, at the national level, try and convince through Skills England, through DWP, through other departments, that there needs to be a national strategy for essential skills and for lifelong learning that can be broad enough that then regional and local commissioners can flavour it for their area and their, meeting the specific needs of their learners. But actually that, that national commitment to it, national campaigns around Skills for Life, we've seen it before 20 years ago. It's just, we just need to make sure that, policymakers, both nationally and regionally and locally, understand that this is, fundamental to, everything that they want to achieve. If we could get the numeracy and literacy rates up in this country to even anywhere near, the average of other countries, then, productivity and, I believe, community cohesion, both benefit.
Right. Kieran, can I ask you the same question?
Absolutely, yeah. Two parts. I think what do we need to get government to sort of act on essential skills right across the missions? I guess it depends on the audience. I mean, we know some of the stuff around where the gaps are and the stats, and that stuff is very powerful for a certain audience. But I think we need to keep telling and listening to stories or about how essential skills are needed to become, I don't like the phrase, but an active citizen, to sort of participate fully, I guess, in society. I wish there was a better phrase that I could think of, but and how important the essential skills are to all the missions. I mean, sort of from a meta point of view, I think people do respond better to stories, and I think that if we keep telling the stories, it will continue to sort of have a powerful impact. I think the other thing that we need Skills England to have a big impact, to sort of have quite a lot of heft, and to be able to sort of talk to with authority all the other departments as well. Have some slight concerns about that based on the legislation that's been proposed so far, but yeah, I think if that's sort of the overarching skills body, it needs to be able to bring in the other departments with authority.
Great. We should come back to that point about the role of Skills England. Rhiannon, when this question about, you know, how do we make sure that, you know, essential skills is seen as a kind of priority right across government and the devolved administrations?
Sure. I think it would help if everybody understood exactly what essential skills are. And I think there is arguments to teach essential skills or various skills in the context of other subjects so that they're not isolated. So if let's say I'm interested in joinery, or it could be well, it could be anything. Let's say joinery. If I'm forced to learn certain skills in isolation, such as maths, I'm probably not going to be interested in maths in isolation. But if I'm interested in joinery and I'm learning about maths skills in the context of joinery, then I'm probably going to be more engaged. Now, it doesn't have to be in relation to the trade skills. I'm thinking about, we've already heard how Sinab studied law. There are math skills needed in law as well, such as working out personal injury claims or something of that nature. So let's say I was interested in being a personal injury lawyer. I wouldn't be interested in learning maths per se, but I would be interested in learning it in the context of the subject that I'm interested in. So it doesn't only apply to trade skills, it applies across all disciplines as far as I can see. So in my opinion, it needs to be more embedded, if that's the correct term, in different subjects. I attended a few roadshows when the last government was consulting on the Advanced British Standard, and I've attended a roadshow on the curriculum and assessment review. And that is the sort of message that is coming from the floor. So it'd be very interesting to see whether the government will actually introduce this sort of method, and if so, to what extent. In addition to that, I would say we need to see smaller classes and more teachers.
Right, thanks. And Simon, Kieran, Rhiannon's touched there on what she'd like to see government actually doing if essential skills are given kind of greater priority. What, Simon, would you like to see government do in this area? What are the priorities from your perspective on essential skills?
Yeah, I think we touched on it in the opening. I think Kieran touched on it as well. If you think, Multiply was a great program. I think it was a good starting point for UK SPF, and I think we benefited from it. In terms of the reach that we could do, and to that point about embedding it, these were numeracy programs. They weren't maths class. There was quite a lot of flexibility and quite a lot of innovation from loads of providers and funders across the sector. So that national approach to trying to raise numeracy levels, that could be repeated for literacy. And actually, with the underspend, just on AEB, forget the case I was trying to make that this should span across government departments, so this is important to DWP and DCMS as it is to the DFE. But actually, there is money there to do this. Rather than giving it back to the Treasury, why don't we try a national literacy programme? Why don't we make that commitment that Multiply was working? So why don't we carry that on? So that it just needs the political will, I think, because yes, additional funding is always going to be nice, and there's no doubt that funding has been cut over the past 10 years. But there is still money there that's not being used, and we could prioritise that, and we could, and the sector would be able to deliver a national literacy programme in the same way as it responded to national numeracy programming in terms of Multiply. So I think that there's just got to be some political will, I think, Naomi, to get it done.
Right. Kieran, what are your thoughts on what you'd like to see government doing? And perhaps if you'd like to pick up on Rhiannon's point about embedding essential skills more.
Yeah, I did actually want to talk about that. As I mentioned, we've done a mini commission on functional skills and apprenticeships, and it is something that ALP is, as other organisations have been talking about for years, really. And one of the things about functional skills is I'm sure everyone here will sort of appreciate is that they are overly academic, not really relevant for the standard, and uh, very demoralizing for learners, very demoralizing for staff and providers as well, which is sort of one of the reasons why it's sort of people, providers and employers are not taking in people who need the English and maths. Um, but we do hear stories. Every provider tells us stories about a learner who hated English and maths, thought they couldn't do it, it was demoralizing, etc. But they were absolutely competent and capable and happy to do it when it was contextualized. Um, and I think that not only would we like to see English and maths removed as a exit requirement of function of apprenticeships, which we think would open the door for more learning. We'd also like to see that functional skills qualifications contextualized and sort of embedded into the apprenticeship standards and the subject they're learning. So painting and decorating might be about learning about areas in that they're painting and decorating, for example, rather than sort of overly academic. Yeah, I mean the other thing it's been touched on a few times is the funding point on adult education and um, the big underspend at the moment on the adult education budget. We really need to get the money out the door. I wonder whether there's something around the individual learning accounts, which the Blunkett review into skills did recommend in 2023. I just wonder whether the government might think about wanting to pick that up. But yeah, that might be some sort of a bigger piece as well. That might again enable more funding for English and maths.
Great. Okay. And we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. Just a reminder to the audience that if you've got questions, please do use the Q&A function, and we'll try and ask as many questions to the panelists as we can. So there's a question here about perhaps we'll touch on this question about an adult-only GCSE course in English. So as regards the new government looking at curriculum development, does the panel think that there is an argument for considering an adult-only GCSE course? So this, John says, at the moment, the exam papers are very obviously aimed at 16-year-olds, and sometimes that's off-putting to adults in the classroom. More broadly, is there an argument that the diet of FS, functional skills, GCSE, and ESOL courses is too narrow? Who wants to take that one?
Can I? Sorry. Good timing.
Go for it,
Kieran. I think in principle I wouldn't be against it. It's not something. It's actually not something I thought about really. I just wonder whether is it a question of just the exam paper being changed or the content of the course being changed if it's the exam paper of very obviously aimed at 16-year-olds. On the functional skills GCSE ESOL being too narrow, I would say yes, quite simply. I'll let Simon come in now.
Okay, and there's another potentially quick question on when the findings of the AELP mini commission on functional skills are going to be released.
As soon as very, very soon. Very, very soon. Just working on sort of drafting the final bits.
Great, great.
Yeah. And hopefully it'll be a good read for everyone.
Okay, lovely. Simon, you were going to come in on this question of an adult-only GCSE course. Or...
Yeah, very, very briefly. And I think there was another question about how can MCAs support, providers in, maximising that. I think you heard the learner story from the woman from Oldham, that actually I think for adults it doesn't start with GCSE, whether it's an adult only one or the standard. We've got to, as we were saying, embed this. We've got to improve people's confidence around numeracy and literacy. For some people that will lead to a formal qualification, for others it won't. And we should be okay with that. And I think that's part of the answer for MCAs, getting that flex between tailored learning and the adult skills funding, so that actually, unaccredited learning around numeracy and literacy has got a real value, both an economic value and a societal value. And actually, if we keep pushing it towards it has to lead to a formal qualification, then I think we are narrowing the appeal, and we're narrowing the learners that will participate, because it's not why they're doing it. They're doing it for family reasons, community reasons, work reasons. They're not doing it for the piece of paper, I don't believe.
Great, thank you.
Rhiannon,
do you want to pick up on that question, or the question about MCAs? So there's the question in the Q&A about how MCAs can support colleges, independent training providers and charities who are struggling to utilise their funding for delivering essential maths and English qualifications.
Sure. I was going to comment on the suggestion that GCSE English could be tailored to adults, and I think that sounds like a good idea, actually, and I don't think that should be very difficult to do. One of the things that came to my mind is that exam providers, they tend to be commercial organisations, so they would be looking at whether it's commercially viable for them to offer certain qualifications. These are some of the hidden things that those of us who work in the front line often don't need to think about. But behind the scenes, the exam providers will be thinking, is it commercial for them to create a qualification that narrow? But like I said, I personally don't think that would be a very difficult obstacle, because there will be a market for it, and to tailor a paper that's already written for young adults should not be difficult to tailor for adults.
Yeah, and there's a question as well, perhaps building on that, about how tailored learning can be used to engage adults. Any thoughts on that?
We at UCU were pleased that the government shifted a little on this concept of tailored learning. So for those who aren't familiar with that vocabulary, it's non-qualification learning. So in their consultation language, it's non-qualification learning. Our view is that that it's too small, it's too narrow. There's not enough capacity to offer non-qualification learning within the system at the moment. We think it's quite short-sighted, and that's by bringing people into the adult education community in the first place through non-qualification learning, that's how we're going to get a stream of people right the way through from pre-GCSE all the way through as far as people want to go. But I do think UCU does think that the provision at non-qualification stage needs to be far richer than it is. And in fact, we see in the Labour manifesto, we see that they are very keen to be offering subjects such as the arts and music across the board in schools, but we don't see that translating very heavily post-16 or in adult education learning, and it would be good to see a bit more of that.
Great, thank you. And just on this theme of kind of contextualizing learning, Simon Fuller has asked, isn't the issue about training of English, Maths and ESOL teachers? Thoughts on that, Rhiannon?
I've got a lot of thoughts on that. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Again, one of those hidden problems. So there is UC's research a few years ago found that there is a £9,000 difference between the average salary of a school teacher and an FE teacher. If you look at the difference, the AOC, Association of Colleges, have said it's 10,000. Whether it's 9 or 10,000, it's, you know, neither here nor there. It's very close. But the point is, there is a very significant difference between the salaries of school teachers and FE teachers. Between FE teachers and adult education teachers, you're then looking at mass casualisation. And the Association of Colleges themselves have found through their research that there's a huge amount of casualisation is present in actually both the FEs in the FE sector and also from our research in the adult education sector. We are arguing for a starting salary of £30,000 for FE teachers. Now, trying to get maths teachers who can go into industry and possibly start their career on 10, 20, £30,000 more than that, the sector cannot compete. So that's why there needs to be much greater investment in the sector. You know, not only in the classroom themselves for students, but for teachers to support students. We're looking at classrooms of 30 students. We're looking at students with special educational needs. There needs to be more support in order to support the teachers and the students.
Great. Simon, Kieran, do you have any thoughts on what
Yeah.
I
Sort of following up from that point, that was my thought, that the challenges on recruitment and retention of teachers in FE is extreme, really. And yeah, we know I say the £9,000 pay gap between a teacher and an FE teacher. What I would say is that's actually it's £1,000 bigger gap for independent training providers than it is for colleges, and 65% of apprenticeships are delivered by independent training providers. Then on top of that, you've got the government announced, I can't remember when now, but there was extra funding for STEM teachers for colleges. I think it was £6,000, but that didn't apply to independent training providers again. And so, particularly thinking about apprenticeships and the functional skills within apprenticeships, it's really a crunch point for apprenticeship providers, independent training providers in this case, that they're not only competing with schools, they're competing with colleges, and they have an enormous pay gap with both. And like Rhiannon said, it leads to sort of casualization of work, etc. And yeah, very difficult sort of environment to be teaching functional skills for sure. And then there's the issue of quite often the people doing functional skills are people with very sort of low understanding of English and math at the start, and when the exam papers are sort of presented and are presented in an academic style, it does take a leap of imagination, I guess, to contextualize them yourself on the day, as good as the teacher might be.
Right.
But it's a really good question.
Yeah, great. We've had a couple of other comments in the chat about making essential skills accessible to all. Comment that there are too many fee and eligibility rules, and specifically in relation to asylum seekers, question about the government changing the 6-month rule for asylum seeking learners so they can access ESOL sooner. So thoughts about how we improve from a learner perspective, how we make essential skills more accessible, and those opportunities to learn. Simon.
Yeah, if I may, thank you. It's got to be, we've got to simplify this. You've got to make it really, really simple for learners. I think there's been some movement recently on prior learning achievement as well. That's helpful if that moves in that right direction. So I think there's lots we could do both through funders and through providers to simplify the eligibility. MCAs have got good degrees of flexibility now that they could apply, if they wanted to. So I think, yes, there's a systemic issue about making this as simple and as wide access and participation as possible by simplifying the rules. On ESOL particularly, and you heard me sort of reference it in my opening remarks, I absolutely hope so. If the question is, will the government do something about the 6-month rule, I really, really hope so. And we push every opportunity we get. I just think it's fundamentally unfair that if you arrive from the Ukraine, Hong Kong, Afghanistan, day one, you're eligible to learn English, and then other countries of origin you're not, and it's just not right. It's not, and I think it's challengeable as well, really. So yes, I really do hope that the government will address that, because we could do. There is ways of doing that. So yeah, let's simplify it. Let's remove as many barriers as possible, because we know what a big step it is for adult learners to return to learning, without complicating it around eligibility, funding, what country you're from, how long you've been here. It's nuts. Let's just sort of simplify it down, and really encourage people to take that brave step of putting their hand up and saying, yeah, I want to re-engage with learning. That is all it should take. If somebody's brave enough to do that, as an adult, then there should be a way that we can support them.
Right. Okay. And interested to hear any thoughts that you've got on the role of we've talked a little bit about mayoral combined authorities, but interested to hear your thoughts on the role of local leaders and partnerships in making essential skills more accessible too. Rhiannon.
Yeah, sure. So funding is devolved to the combined mayoral authorities, and I believe that the Greater London Authority, that they actually provided more money towards adult education than the non-devolved areas. That was at their discretion to do so. And the same discretion applies to mayoral authorities across the country. Whether they do that or not, it's up to them. We have started engaging with them to promote the benefits of adult education to their areas locally. But I do think that there are merits in this sort of funding model, because they are closer to their areas. They know the needs in their areas. They know their people. They know what the gaps are. They are just closer to their markets. But we, again, keep going back to the same source of problem. Even though they've got this level of discretion, they still don't have enough funding. And I can give you an example. I won't say which authority it is, but we came across a provider in the last couple of years who actually failed their Ofsted inspection. When you dug a little bit deeper, they failed their Ofsted inspection because they couldn't actually recruit or retain staff to deliver some of the courses that they needed to deliver. So people want to deliver these courses, but there just hasn't been the funding to do that. If I can just cross-reference something that might be of interest and relevance here. So in 2020, the House of Commons Education Committee reported and published a report called A Plan for an Adult Skills and Lifelong Learning Revolution, and it recommended establishing a community learning centre in every town. So when I was growing up, I would know where to go to get adult education. If I wanted adult education now, in my community, I'm not sure where I would go, because I'm aware of the various organisations on this call. Then I would know to go online and where to look. But in my community, if I was an asylum seeker, I might not have access to the internet. I wouldn't necessarily have digital access. I would want to be able to see that adult education was available in my community. And I think that's what's lacking. And that's what this report's recommended. And I think that's what's lacking today.
Could I just build on that very quickly now? Because I think there's a next stage of this, really. So we're working with every MCA across the country and still in the non-devolved areas. And there are differences of approach. And some of that's good because it's meeting that local need and flexibility. But it does, at the margins, it does create little bits of postcode lotteries here and there, depending on, the funding sort of priorities for MCAs. So, there is a challenge, again, back to a national lifelong learning strategy, to try and put some framework around that. The other interesting thing will be, now that we move into these integrated deals for Greater Manchester Combined Authority and West Midlands, so almost no ring fencing of individual pots of money, how will AEB, how will that investment into adult learning be safeguarded, retained, increased? Because they could do that. That it'd be a real sort of interesting to see where in both Greater Manchester and West Midlands, where they make those decisions once they've got an integrated sort of devolution pot. So I think that's going to be the next sort of big sort of question for us, in terms of where do adult skills fit in a single devolved pot of funding.
Great. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. There's also a comment in the Q&A about the role of e-learning and AI. I mean, there's now like this kind of proliferation of different AI tools and apps. Interested to hear just very quick thoughts on that, and if there's kind of one thing that Skills England do over the next few months on essential skills, what would you like to see them do? Who wants to start?
I'll start quickly on the technology. So pre-COVID, 99% of what the WEA did in those community centres that we've just been referencing, 2 years of being a completely online provider, now a hybrid provider, and actually seeing a return to the classroom, people wanting to go back. So about 70% of our provision is back in those community venues now, and that's a choice by learners. So there's a massive role, e-learning, that spike that we saw through COVID, all of the tools and techniques, and ability, as long as you're not in digital poverty and as long as you've got digital skills, that's, I think there's a massive role for it. AI, the good, the bad, and the indifferent, depending on where you come from with that, there are real pressures in terms of qualifications, examinations, coursework, but actually real opportunities. Information is readily available now. And Skills England, I think it'll be really interesting. Kieran approached it. I think we need to know whether they've got enough. I think you used heft as the word, Kieran. I think that's right. Are they going to have enough oomph across government to really be able to pull this together? So we'll wait and see.
Right. Kieran, your final thoughts.
So on Skills England, I think the heft point, and I've actually heard some debate about whether there'll be a second bill to set up. I'm not quite sure about that though. I'd just like it to see it simplify the system, or start to drive towards a simplification of the system with the learner at the heart. I mean, I work in the sector and I still get confused by it, to be honest. So I think that's the main point. I kind of forgot the other question. Sorry, Naomi.
It was about technology and
Technology, yeah. I've heard so on the AI point, I've heard some really interesting examples of, for example, AI being used as a tutor, not to replace the human tutor, but as a sort of supplement, which is a really interesting idea, and I've heard some powerful stats behind it. Of course, as Simon pointed out, we're here to talk about essential skills, digital being one of them, and so it kind of makes e-learning and AI a bit of it's a bit more tricky, isn't it? whether it's accessible to all. But yeah, I mean, there's an exciting time.
Great, thank you. And last word to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. On Skills England, I think they have got a massive job ahead. I'm not sure whether their remit is completely defined yet. What I can see is that they need to map what some of these skills needs are, and reconcile that with the work of LSIPs, the local skills improvement plans, and the employer bodies that draft those up. On e-learning and technology, I do think there are lots of very exciting opportunities there for AI, but at the same time, I really don't think that they are a substitute for a very good teacher. If I think back to my own studies, of course, there is a place for student-centered learning, but at the same time, the experience of a tutor, and hearing about their experiences, if they've been in industry for a long time, nothing replaces that.
Right. Brilliant. Well, we are right out of time, but thank you very much to the audience for your comments and questions, and to our panelists. Quite a wide-ranging conversation. Obviously, quite a few questions about kind of where next, but quite a few opportunities identified too. So thank you very much for joining us this morning, and I'll hand back to Stephen.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, panelists. Really good discussion there. Lots of issues covered. I think Skills England is a very impressive organisation because it's managed to publish its first report that was referred to there, despite the fact it doesn't actually exist yet. So well done to the DFE analyst team for writing that report. But we'll see what focus it's actually given over time and what powers it has. I think a key point for me is making sure that all of these things, whether it's Skills England, local skills improvement partnerships, combined authorities, this, that, and the other, have English, maths, and ESOL at the heart of all of their thinking, and build it in that contextualised way that we heard from our panelists there, and also actually from the learners that we heard from right at the start. I'm going to take a very swift chair's prerogative just to make a point about contextualisation and ambition. Definitely the case that functional skills as they stand are a barrier to apprenticeships, partly because of how they're set up, partly because the funding's not there, partly because there's not extra time involved, and therefore becomes an issue for providers, employers, and individuals alike. I would say the answer is to change those things rather than to give up on them. So the OECD found that general education, like maths and English in apprenticeships, is between 50 and 100 hours over the course of an apprenticeship, and you only have to do it if you don't have those English and maths levels. In Germany and Switzerland, it's 400 hours. In Norway, it's 600 hours. So we are already an outlier and look a bit weird. And I don't think we need to be more of a weird outlier. So that's my aside, but it's a topic for another day's discussion as well. But I make it as a general point that we should have ambition, invest, and get things right for employers, individuals, and providers, rather than take a step back and give up. Right, that's off my chest now. So that brings us to the end of this plenary set of sessions. I would like to say a massive thank you to all of our speakers, particularly those learners we heard from at the start who were just amazing, I thought. And also to our conference partners, so the UCL Institute of Education, RAPAL, NTECLA and UCU, and also to our sponsors, the ETF. Big thank you as well to the Learning and Work Institute team who make all of these things happen and run the event so smoothly, despite the fact I sometimes read things out in the wrong order. So big thank you to the L&W team. We're going to take a short break now, and then the breakout sessions are going to start, and they will start at 11:45. The links for those sessions are in the programme on our website, and also if they haven't already appeared, they're about to appear in the chat as well. So make sure you kind of pick up the right link. As I mentioned earlier, we've got one which is looking ahead to the new international data on essential skills. We've got a second one which is looking at impacts of devolution that we talked about during the plenary session there, and some really interesting things going on in different parts of England, for example. And then the third one's looking at young people and the success we've had improving essential skills for 16 to 19-year-olds, but how we can do even better. The one other thing I wanted to mention is that we've got this new international data coming out in the middle of December. The day after it comes out, we're going to be holding a webinar. This is on Thursday, the 12th of December. And we've got Andreas Schleicher, who is the OECD's Director for Education and Skills, speaking at that, as well as a number of other speakers as well. So we'd love to see as many of you as possible at that and debating what those results mean and don't mean as well. So the QR code, which is about to appear on the screen. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. So scan that QR code, or you can also go to the events section of our website as well. Very last thing is to say we really want to make sure we get your feedback on this event to make sure we get it right and even better next year as well. So it's very possible a QR code might be about to appear on the screen for that one as well. There we go. Excellent. QR codes galore this morning. So please do scan that and let us know what was good and what you'd like to see more of next year. And then lastly, just a massive thank you to everybody who's joined the event this morning, and you're about to go off to breakouts as well and have lots of debates in those. Really pleased to see more than 300 of you signed up to the event, and lots of discussion and questions going on as well. What you do is really important, and we want to shout it from the rooftops and make sure it gets the priority and the celebration and the funding, to go back to the previous discussion, that it deserves. So we look forward to working with all of you on that. Meantime, enjoy your 10-minute or so break. Then the breakout sessions will start at 11:45. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you soon.